Hello, welcome to Active Bryant Fitness Systems. I'm Scott Bryant, Master C.H.E.K practitioner in London, back pain specialist. And this video is all about celebrities, sports performance, drugs, addiction, and ego. Now, I'm talking from a little bit of experience of when I done drugs when I was like 16 to 19. And then I quit because I wanted to get bigger muscles. I wanted to be in shape and I didn't want to be a fraud to people that I spoke to. And I always wanted to stay fit. So being an Essex boy originally, as in born in Essex and trained in the two Essex boy gyms where they used to train. But I wasn't in their world type thing. I was in my own little world. And when I quit drugs when I was 19, a lot of my associates were all still doing drugs and 5 of them are dead now. So I'm pleased that I went the road that I went, otherwise I probably wouldn't be here neither, you know. So what I feel is that, you know, you get a lot of these high profile celebrities, and I worked with a movie star and pop star, and I worked with 2 very, very famous celebrity photographers. And these celebrity photographers, if I said their names, you'd definitely know them. They're that world famous, okay? And one of them had I could see there was addiction issues there, and another one of them had gone away from the addiction and decided to do a different route. And this photographer has done many albums of many famous people, pop stars, from the 1980s and the 1990s. And they said to me that as soon as they decided to clean up their act and to get away from drugs, their work went down, their invites went down, everything just really changed, and that was a bit of a shock. And then they realised that a lot of the celebrity world, in which to be in that world and to be at the top of it, you've got to be doing coke on a regular basis. You've got to be getting shit-faced on a regular basis and all this type of stuff. And I just see that as hoocha or as dark energy. Okay, so I don't go, even though I was a doorman for 14 years, I don't go into clubs, I don't go into bars anymore. I try and avoid it. If somebody says to me, oh, let's go to this pub, I'd rather go out to a restaurant where I can relax and feel more comfortable in that environment. Does that make sense? So when it comes to athletes that are taking like probably anabolic steroids in which to get their sports performance up, they become addicted to them. And if it's a man, their testosterone will drop off when they're not on the steroids, and then they've got to keep taking it in which to build it up, and they've got to keep doing this, and they may not be able to have kids because of that if it's a man. And now you're seeing like CrossFit women and people like that are definitely on anabolic steroids because of the amount of muscle mass that they've got they would not get without being on anabolic steroids. So I believe that a lot of people that get very, very super famous in either sports or entertainment or becomes a guru in a certain way, they start taking the drugs because they can't handle normal life anymore. So when I was living in Essex, when I was a young teenager, say, or in my mid-20s, I would walk around my local area and I'd have 10, 15 people say hello to me just when I was walking around shopping. And I didn't really like that. And that's why I was happy to move away where people didn't know me and didn't say hello. Does that make sense? Because I'm a bit of an introvert and extrovert at the same time. So after working with these super pop stars and celebrities, I realised that they all have mega high egos, for one, and 2, they won't really listen to the coach as much or the person that's helping them as much because their ego is so high. And they might listen to, the Bulletproof Coffee and they might listen to stretching because it's going to get out of pain. But if you was to say to them, right, I want you to go to bed at 10:30 every night, they won't do it because they want to be out partying and taking the drugs with their friends. So they can keep at this higher level. Does that make sense? And keep in with them people. And if they decide they're going to go clean, unless the other people are deciding to do the same thing, they won't get the work that they used to get. Does that make sense? And I believe that when people become super famous or super successful, there's people around them that are trying to bring them down a little bit and trying to stop them from going even higher. So then drugs will be, on tap. I remember Elton John saying that when they done Live Aid, they had a big bowl on the stage where Freddie Mercury and all the other big top pop stars could go and snort coke in the back of the where they were playing and gigging. So obviously that would cause damage long term. But obviously they're, playing Live Aid in front of the whole world. So they need something in which to get themselves going. Do you know what I mean? So I understand that, but they don't understand the damage it causes. Does that make sense? So my ex-girlfriend was very friendly with a super mega pop star, and she asked me, "Oh, I want you to come round and meet him." And I refused because I knew that he smoked cannabis all the time, and that was one of my bad addictions, and I didn't want to go down that route again, and I didn't want to sit there and end up getting stoned off the fumes and end up going back into that world. Does that make sense? Unfortunately, this pop star passed away this year, which is really sad. And my ex-girlfriend is probably still in bits because they were really, really close. But I didn't do it in which to be negative or do it bad against her. I was just looking after my own health and knowing that I've got a huge addiction problem, as in I've got an addiction personality. So I stay away from people like that. And unfortunately, many of the pop stars and super athletes and super gurus, they're so high in their ego, they can't see their own addiction. Does that make sense? And I feel that their ego is so strong that they just can't quieten the ego and say to themselves, well, this is causing me harm, or this is making me look bad, so I'm going to stop. But a lot of them will go, I don't give a shit what people think, and I'm going to keep doing it, even though it makes them look bad and discredits them in other people's eyes. But then you've got the other flip side of it now, where drugs are the norm. You walk down the high street where I live and you'll smell dope all the time. And then you'll see drug bags on the floor everywhere. And that's just part of life. If you look at LA, there's videos on YouTube where there's parts of LA where they're pooing in the street and there's loads of druggies everywhere. So it has become the norm. Now, when I was doing drugs back in the late 80s, early 90s, you wouldn't tell anyone that you'd smoked cannabis. You wouldn't tell anyone that you'd done LSD. You wouldn't tell anyone you'd done speed because it was really frowned upon. Whereas now, it's the norm. If people invite me to parties, I don't go because I know that element's going to be there. Does that make sense? And the same as if I take on a new client, I'm watching for the pupils, I'm watching to see where they do that all the time and play with their face, because that's a sign of cocaine. And I'm looking to see how their temperaments change. So if they get quite nasty and aggressive, then I know that this isn't normal for them to be like that. And it could be a bad coke come down from the night before. So I try and avoid people like that. Does that make sense? Only because of how I feel about it myself. At the end of the day, everyone's got free will and they can do whatever they want, but don't try and entice me to do it. Does that make sense? So really, I think the guys in, you know, real high sports performance that are really, really super famous, I think when they get to their midlife, when they're not as famous and they're not the sports star that's in the news and in the media anymore, and they've made all their money, they've got this addiction issue that they can't get rid of because they've been addicted to it for 10, 15 to 20, 25 years. You know, people like Elton John, he's been extremely lucky that he got over it, whereas George Michael, it killed him. The same as it killed Michael Jackson, it killed Prince, and many other famous musicians. And I just think they're taking the drugs to look for escapism from the fame that they've got. They can't handle the fame of everywhere they go down the street. You know, they can't go shopping and buy a pint of milk without somebody going, "Can I have your autograph?" Or, you know, "I see you in the news," or "I see you in the media, you know, why are you saying that or doing that?" So I totally get that. When I was working with this famous pop star and movie star, we'd go out for dinner together. And because I was still in my dormant security mode, we'd have the paparazzi asking her questions and getting in the way when we was having a meal together. And so I told them to F off. Otherwise, I was going to get a punch. Simply because, you know, she is my client. She's paying me lots of money to look after her. And we want to have some quality time together to talk about lifestyle and health and all this type of stuff. So I totally get it. But I don't see why these extremely successful people can't see the long-term damage that they're doing to themselves. And it's really, you know, killing them even quicker. Because I can remember when I used to get stoned all the time when I was like from 16 to 19, the time went super quick. And if I could go back and change it, I would. But I did learn some stuff from it as well. But obviously, dealing with addiction can be really, really tough for some people. And it never leaves you. Do you know what I mean? So you've got to be controlled and put your addiction into healthy ways of being addicted. So I train 4 days a week and I walk everywhere. So I'm always thinking about health and longevity of my life than rather taking a drug that could kill me and end my life pretty quickly, you know. And for some people it does that. So my friend who was a doorman, he was taking cocaine on a regular basis, and he split up with his girlfriend and he twisted his knee, and he was an American football guy and he was really into it and wanted to go to the top of it. But when he ripped his knee, he realised he couldn't play anymore and he split up with his girlfriend. But during that time he was taking cocaine, he went and hung himself. Now I believe if he wasn't on the cocaine, it wouldn't have been such a downer, and he probably would have fought through it and thought, well, what else can I do, you know, with my life, instead of, you know, taking my own life. And he was really young. He was in his 20s, you know. So these are the people that I feel for, is that the people that see their gurus or these super successful superstars and movie stars, you know, damaging their health, and then they find out that they're doing drugs. So they go and do the same thing themselves and end up losing their lives. And this is what I believe that every person that's successful in their own field needs to think about. And you need to be careful of people that you influence. Does that make sense? So I've done 2,500 videos on YouTube, got 8,000 subscribers. And I've worked with lots of, you know, very high profile clients. And recently I got probably the most successful businessman in the world. And we started working together. and he vetted me to find out whether I was into drugs or not. And I said, nope, drugs are not for me, and I would not suggest you take any performance enhancing stuff or anything like that. And because I was so open and honest, we're still working together, and he pays me a lot of money. And that's simply because I was so upfront and straight at the beginning. Does that make sense? And what I found is that a percentage of people won't work with me because I'm against, I'm like, I know the damage that drugs and alcohol do. So they won't work with me because they're doing dope every weekend. And then I've got other clients that highly admire what I went through because they read my book, and they realise that I cleaned my life up. And to do that is really challenging and quite hard, you know. So me as a really small influencer on YouTube and TikTok, I don't want anybody to think that, oh, Scott, you know, is doing steroids and that's why he's as big as he is. And Scott says to his clients that they should do the same thing. And I certainly do not, and I never would. Because one, it's really unprofessional. And two, it makes you look bad towards the CEO or the professional that's super successful that wants somebody doing what they're not doing. Does that make sense? And to be able to be a mentor to them, to help them improve their sports performance, their addiction, or whatever issue that they've got. But I think a lot of superstars become superstars because of the skill, the expertise that they've got. But then they have to do something that's self-destructive. And if you look at Alan Watts, so Alan Watts was a philosopher, he's dead now. He was an alcoholic. So how can you listen to an alcoholic's philosophy when he had this thing that was causing a problem with his health? The same as, you know, if you look at Robbie Williams, the comedian, you know, that died, that found out he had a brain disorder, then he hung himself. Now, he was a heavy cocaine user as well, allegedly. Now, would he have done that if he wasn't doing the cocaine, or if he wasn't doing the cocaine before he found out he had the brain problem, that maybe he wouldn't have taken his life and he'd still be here now? Does that make sense? So I try and, in my own life, I try and look at other people's mistakes and not make them mistakes. Does that make sense? From doing drugs or alcohol. And some of my family have got like addiction to alcohol because it's the norm, and you know, even the government say it's all right to have a couple of beers and all this type of stuff. But I've seen the damage it's done through door work, the damage it's done to people in clubs and bars, as well as the damage it's done to close people to me, if that makes any sense. So I very rarely drink. If I ever drink, it's once in a blue moon, just if I just feel like it, or there may be a little celebration and I might have a tipple. But apart from that, there's no drugs or alcohol in my home. And I don't hang around with people that do anything like that, you know, because I don't like hanging around with pissheads because they just piss me off and I want to whack them. As in, you know, especially when they act really stupid, you know. So I suppose I'm keeping myself in this little box of my own protection box. But this is what I've seen. The people that realise what they're doing is damaging their health, they start to do the same as me, where they're really selective with the friends and the people they hang around with, and what they do in their lives. So I work out 4 times a week, then I walk everywhere, I eat organic food, I drink my body weight in ounces of water, I do like a bit of chocolate, that's my one vice. So really, celebrities, because of the world that they hang around in, and if they pull away from it, they can lose their celebrity friends. then they start losing contracts. Then they start not getting the big movie part or the big album part or stuff like that. And this is what my close photographer friend was telling me, which is quite shocking, really, that it's set up that way, isn't it? And I think if you believe in the Illuminati and all that, I think that they want damaged people that are super successful so they're easier to control. Does that make sense? So please make a comment down below if you've watched the video all the way through and tell me what you think. Tell me, do you have an addiction that you're finding it hard to deal with and you might need some help? And I can give you some hints and tips of things that you can take to stop the cravings and stuff like that. Thank you for listening to me today. Thank you for subscribing, following. Please share this video with somebody that you think it might help. And I look forward to chatting to you again soon. Thanks very much. Peace out. Bye.